thanks for coming along, Kenneth.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And yeah, how do you say your how do you pronounce your last name before I butcher it? I always forget.
Oh, it's Babarinsa. Babarinsa.
Okay, yeah.
Strictly speaking, actually, it's
Sorry
weird
if you just like.
Yeah, sure.
It. It's because there's so much echo in here. You have to come right up.
Get up close to dead and everything. Right. Yeah. So it's Babarinsa.
Okay.
But curiously enough, it's because it's a traditional name, and actually the I has an inflection. So like the simple pronunciation is Babarinsa, but if you like spoke to like purists, they'd be like Babarinsa.
Okay.
Like
oh,
it's really like I never say it like that.
Is that Dundonian actually?
No. No. Funnily enough, it's actually Glaswegian.
Oh, okay. That sounds like it. Bloody hipsters down in Glasgow. And yeah, man, I appreciate you coming down. It was I don't know if you've listened to the podcast with Josh.
And
basically, like I kind of just had in my head that I would always maybe have you on at some point because you know back in the day we've had some conversations.
Waddy.
And I mean, we were in. I think it was we were talking about it. I think it was the casino.
Yes.
And it was open. It's the only place in Dundee that's open at that time. So we just ended up having, I think it was steak and egg, and then just chatting like.
Oh yeah. I do remember that actually. It was a good time. To be fair, it was a good time. Yeah, man.
But that's the thing about Dundee. There's not many places to go after a certain time.
True.
Is it changed?
No, I don't. No, not at all actually. Because I mean, now it's still just casino.
Yeah.
Some places are open till kind of more places, I guess, are open till a bit later. But once that's all done, then you just have to figure out what it is you want to do. McDonald's is open till later on.
That's
now.
crazy.
They're open till like, is it 3.5, 3?
Even after that infamous fight that happened.
Oh yeah, that fight.
So basically, just for people that obviously are not from Dundee, there was a video on YouTube on Facebook.
It was Facebook, yeah.
That was circulating, and it was basically this kid started fighting with a manager from McDonald's, which you never see over here. It's more of an American thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was crazy just this. Yeah. But someone said that supposedly the guy had autism, or that was what. Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
But
I've heard different stories. Yeah. I heard Szechuan sauce and stuff like that.
Is that what it was?
I mean, this is pure speculation here, so I mean.
You've already gone up in my books if you know what Szechuan sauce is, though.
That stuff is ridiculous, by the way. Like, people getting generally mad over a sauce, which is kind of like, you can just get it at your local Chinese. Yeah. There was no need to like kick off about it at like McDonald's, but for some reason, like these entitled fanboys were like, Szechuan sauce.
And it comes for people. Well, if you listen to this podcast, you pretty much like Rick and Morty, and essentially that's where this whole sort of this outcry for more Szechuan sauce was because of a cartoon show.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
People were fighting, people were saying like, don't go to McDonald's because there's people like queuing for Szechuan sauce, and literally throwing a hissy fit when they were all out of it.
It seems ludicrous now, but like that's one thing which I've kind of become like increasingly aware of is like the power of just like of subliminal influence.
Yeah.
And just mob mentality. If you're able to like, you affect the right number of people, and eventually it's just a domino effect, the way it cascades kind of through like the public conscious and stuff like that.
I mean, it was always seen as those words like subliminal. It's always been something. There was a conspiracy theory with music back in the day.
Oh
like,
yeah.
You play like an Ozzy
song
Osbourne
backwards or whatever,
and it would give you like messages.
Yep.
And then, but now it seems to be more sort of nefarious. Like it seems to be sort of very much hidden in plain sight.
Absolutely.
I mean, even with just like adverts on Facebook, they're pretty much figuring out what you're looking at. Like even on my home PC, if I'm on my phone I was looking at some monitors for my studio here, and it comes up on my Facebook feed on my PC that I'm looking for these monitors. And that's like, okay, it's simple, but at the same time, it's pretty like, they're shaping what you're trying to buy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really curious form of like, of shepherding. I mean, they're going to call it targeted advertising, but really it is like really curious shepherding. Back to just before we hop to this, actually, all the stuff about the subliminal messages and stuff like that, if you play songs backwards, like having kind of gotten a bit more familiar with the recording process, like in recent years, I'm kind of like that stuff is like, it's not real. The amount of tomfoolery and the amount of effort it takes to get something sounding half decent in the first place, it's like, it's almost like incredulous that by the time you spent all that time doing that, you're then like, oh yeah, hang on, just while we're at it, why don't we just throw a subliminal message in here? You know what I mean? It's like
maybe a tech band where it sounds like
probably I can imagine that,
not like a simple rock song or
exactly not Ozzy Osbourne. He's like he's slurring his words and he sounds like something else backwards just by accident. Oh man,
they were talking about that. And do you remember Waterboy? No, not Waterboy, Little Nicky, the Adam Sandler one.
Oh yeah,
and they were talking about subliminal messages, and he was like, "No, Ozzy's straight up with his, devil worshipping."
Okay,
lyrics.
okay.
He doesn't do it backwards.
Unbelievable. Yeah, he just says it. It says it as it is, But yeah, the whole targeted advertising thing. I think that's quite interesting, and I don't know whether it's. I feel like it's important actually that the general public is very, very aware of how targeted they are in a way. And when I say targeted, it's not even in like a fear-mongering way. It's just be aware that something's happening. You know what I mean? Like everyone goes by doing what they do and they'll see it. Like you'll see it, just this casual. I would actually go as far as calling it like a vague intrusion of privacy. But you go and you see this thing and it like flashes up in your views or whatever, or in your mentions, and you're like, oh yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. But it's not a big deal. I mean, casual browsing, whatever. Like the same thing happened for me actually, like not too long ago, because I was looking up microphones, and just out of curiosity, it's weird because I spend this is one of the absolute rabbit holes of like getting into like prosumer audio basically, but like you spend half the time thinking about ways to improve your setup.
Yeah.
So. And then
it's never ending.
No, absolutely not.
It always starts off when you're a musician. And if you're really conscious about your tone, which is your sound, you want to perfect it and tweak here and there. You're never happy with it.
No, not at all.
Since I've started this sort of home studio, I'm constantly looking at stuff to buy. Just shit.
It's unreal. And then you're looking at that, and also you're realizing how bigger it is than you. Like, I mean. You're kind of looking at what people who are doing the records that are on the radio are kind of buying, and you're like, okay, well, I mean, these microphones are like 10 grand, and you're kind of looking at them, you're like, oh yeah, I'll never be in my ballpark, whatever. And then you casually browse into an email, and it comes up, boom, Elam 251 for like 9 grand or whatever. Like, click here to buy a Toman. I'm like, nah, nah, man.
But it is sort of. It feels like what's that movie with Tom Cruise, the one where the
Minority Report.
It's becoming very like that. The basic premise of that movie is there's it's like a preemptive sort of strike on you trying to commit a crime. So they have these 3 people that can see slightly into the future. Is it the pre-crime unit? And essentially they stop you from committing the crime, which in itself has got a whole lot of like things tied into it,
ethically and stuff like that.
Morally, it's all sort of beige as fuck.
Yeah. I like that. Sounds like a thick of it line, like beige is morally beige as fuck.
And but the sort of advertising that you see slightly in that movie is quite like reflective of now. Actually, it's quite prophetic in a way. And basically, he's walking through the mall, and he obviously it sees his contacts or his actual eyes.
Okay.
And it's all sort of like the advertisement that pops up is all tailored to him. So he's
so it's got some sort of like retinal identifier or something like that, and he just looks at it and it's like, okay.
Because he's trying to hide in the movie, and he's walking through this mall.
Okay.
And he's just followed by these advertisements that are saying his name. It's like, oh, hey, Mr. So-and-so, come here. So and it's crazy. Like, that's happening in a sort of hardware sort of form
absolutely.
Just now.
Yeah.
And it's, you can only imagine where it's going to go, even in like 10 years, Like, is it Alexa, the little robot thing that you can get?
I'm not cool with that.
Like, that can just sit and listen to your
conversations. I'm totally not cool with that. I remember when it was kind of first announced, and technological wise, I mean, I side with Apple, and as much as I'm aware of like the shortcomings and stuff, I'm kind of like, usually leaning in their direction when it comes to like buying tech or like endorsing tech or whatever. But for the longest time, I've always thought that the way Google was able to execute its speech recognition algorithm was a lot better than Apple's.
Yeah.
Like by a country mile.
Yeah.
And then this thing came out and you're like, wow. Wow. I don't think, if in our teenage years someone had said you could speak to a speech recognition algorithm and it'd be able to answer your questions with context.
Yeah.
You'd be like, nah, there's no way that they're going to pull that off like that soon. And now you ask it a question, you're like, you ask it when something happened, and then you're like, what happened afterwards? But you don't even have to repeat, you don't have to mention what you're talking about. You say, what happened afterwards? And then takes it, and it's like, okay, well, based on the question you ask, here's the possible answer that could be.
Well, as a 31-year-old, when I was a teenager.
You're 31?
Yeah. And, when I was a teenager, it was obviously, I was completely amazed that your computer, you could type in to your computer and it would say it back.
Oh, like,
that always amazed me.
Yep, absolutely.
So imagine like telling a kid that age that you're going to be able to speak into something and it's going to take everything you say and be able to relay it and search based on that line of dialogue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
mad. It's mad. It's getting mental. I mean, that is even child's play when you look at in the grand scheme of sort of where we're evolving in terms of tech. Have you seen what Boston Dynamics are doing? I mean, everyone's seen what Boston Dynamics are doing.
I mean,
robots and stuff.
It's getting
like,
freaky, yeah.
Like the door opening robots and stuff like that.
I love the video that someone made of the Scottish one. Where basically they anthropomorphized the robot as a sort of Scotsman who's looking for a job. So he's like really, like he's annoyed when they push him with the stick.
When he gets kicked over and stuff like that.
It's brilliant, though.
It's too real.
But it does. When I first watched it, when they were pushing the sort of the one on the two legs, the bipedal one with the stick, I did sort of, my heart did sort of like, that's not right. Like, are we entering some form of new sort of moral, like technological moralism, and sort of even with something that's not conscious, that is just a robot.
Absolutely, yeah, because it opens. I totally agree, because it opens a whole new like Pandora's box of kind of questions, I guess, on how we relate to that technology ethically as human beings. And it's crazy because I don't think we're even done with humans.
No,
like we're not there yet with human beings in terms of how we were able to like relate to each other as like,
socially.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the importance of allowing someone else who's different, like allowing others to be themselves and respecting their right to be themselves. We're not even there yet as human beings, so it's like we're already shooting off like towards robots and stuff, and it's like where's that gonna take us, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Have you watched Altered Carbon?
I have not.
Okay.
But it's been on my radar for the longest time because I keep getting people like, yeah, you absolutely should watch Altered Carbon and find out what's going on. But
well, this kind of draws into a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about recently on podcasts. But essentially, it's without giving anything away.
Yeah.
Basically, your consciousness is stored on a piece of hardware.
Okay.
And you can change from body to body, which is called sleeves. So you can essentially be an eternal being.
That's if you're rich, right?
Yeah, of course. Obviously.
All right, okay, cool.
Capitalism plays into it as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's kind of bad if you go from a different sleeve, not your own, because basically they just regrow your own body and then put your sleeve, your consciousness back into that. So that's the best form of it.
I see.
It's still your DNA.
Yeah.
But if you go from like from me to you, you're a different person.
Yeah.
If I go into a woman as well,
Okay.
But over time, you get what's called sleeve sickness, which is like a disease from going from sleeves that are not your own. And it's such a great, like, all the sort of questions that you have watching maybe Blade Runner or all the sort of sci-fi noir movies.
Okay.
It kind of, it brings them about and answers them, but
cool,
really satisfyingly. It's brilliant.
I need to watch this. Definitely next time I read. Oh
man, it's brilliant. Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of is it the guy from RoboCop? The newest RoboCop.
He plays someone in something else, doesn't he? He plays like some sort of mayor or senator in something else as well. He plays a senator. And
no, he's the.
Is he in House of Cards by any chance? Is he senator in House of Cards?
I'm not sure about House of Cards, but he's the army guy in Suicide Squad.
Yes, I think he does play a senator in House of Cards. Yeah, I recognize his face. I just put it in my head, then I was like, yeah, I recognize that.
One that I just never started watching.
House of Cards.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Now it's awkward. It's awkward, and I hate that when like you find out that like people do dumb things in tar.
Yeah.
You know, but having said that, it's very good television. It's very good television. I don't think a lot of people are into like political television because I think we tend to like shun stuff like that because it seems like it's written in a way that I don't know whether it's written in a way that's designed to like maybe shun you if you're not like remotely intellectual.
Okay.
And I think that's why sometimes like general populace will like alienate stuff like that. But it's great TV. I think everyone should kind of like watch it. Yeah. Not even trying too hard to understand what's going on. Just look at it from like a shallow point of view, just to see, you know, because I feel like a surprising amount of that might tie in with like what's going on behind the scenes type thing. Just like I think everyone who lives in the UK should watch The Thick of It. Yeah, like absolutely should, because it's like hilariously. Like you watch some stuff and you're like, I bet this is what it's like for real. I bet they have these like outbursts when they have to come away from that and go back to like their normal life and deal with their families after like days of being a shell of a person to seem likable to everyone else. Imagine that. Imagine having to try your absolute hardest every day to be liked by everyone or as many people as possible, you know.
Plus there's a swearing Scotsman in it, which is
fantastic. I'll always have him as, curiously enough. It's funny, right? This is a great seg, right? So I was at work and I work in a phone shop, telecoms. Okay. So we have.
Is that the name, or are you just general? Is that general?
Oh no, that's general. Okay. Just general, whatever. So we had someone came in and they were they had like a phone, right? And I saw like Malcolm Tucker in the list, and I was like, oh, and I laughed, and I'm like, what are you laughing? I was like, oh, Malcolm Tucker. This is just as a casual browser. I was like, oh yeah, Malcolm Tucker, and I was like, oh yeah, curiously enough, that person is the person that Malcolm Tucker's name was inspired by, because the person who was writing for The Thick of It was looking for like an average sort of like boring sounding name, and they took that name.
No way.
And I was like, wow.
But did you fanboy at that moment?
No. I had to keep it cool because I couldn't inquire too much, because this is that, you know, once you just keep it moving. You find, you know, you get excited for a little bit and you just keep it moving. You know?
Sort of just to drop back to what you're saying about the like people tending not to watch sort of political shows. I think maybe people think that they have too much of that in their day-to-day lives, so I think they just tend to not go down that road when it comes to a TV show.
Do you think?
But it's blindly though. Like I think if a lot of people watch, like, you know, House of Cards or The Thick of It, like they would get it and understand it.
Okay.
Because one of the shows I love is Veep.
We started watching Veep like last week. Yeah. It's absolutely. It's fantastic. I think everyone should watch that as well. Yeah.
Especially from obviously, the premise of the show is it's the lady vice president.
Absolutely.
And it's her term while she was sort of second to the president, obviously. And it's the sort of trials and tribulations of her campaign behind the scenes, and
being as useless. Well, her and her team being as useless as like a chocolate teapot, basically. Actually, the people who wrote The Thick of It, kind of.
I think they
it's their work. Yeah, they did. So every time the credits roll, you see them mentioned in there. I'm like, I see you guys.
Did you start watching it off the back of the Thick of It?
We'd meant to watch it for a long time. This is me and my girlfriend. We meant to watch it for a long time, and then I can't even remember what happened. I think there was just like one evening where we're kind of just like scrolling through looking for stuff to watch. I remember what it was. We're watching How to Get Away with Murder, and at the moment they've got this crossover with Scandal.
All right, okay.
So then I kind of got curious because it's all like US political drama, blah, blah, blah. I was like, why don't we watch Veep, see what's going on? So we then put it on to watch that, and I was like...
I binge watched it. It was just brilliant.
So good. I like how the comedy, like the dry humor kind of translates. Yeah. It's really dry. It's like American, and it's also curious how American dry is so like different from British dry.
I think it's sort of getting there. Obviously, without people like Curb Your Enthusiasm and all these type of shows, I don't think these shows now could exist with that dry humor, obviously. But it was very different back then. But now it's, I think they're bridging the gap slightly between them.
It's becoming cool to have that sort of like dry humor kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have you seen a show called, actually before I jump onto this, right? Because the point you're making about the fact that people maybe don't want to watch political shows or whatever because it's too much of it in real life.
Especially now as well.
Yeah. Do you know what? I feel like it's weird because I don't think it is. I actually don't I don't think it is. I don't think there's too much of it in people's real lives. I think it's on the fringes. So it's a there's very superficial engagement from the public with what's happening in terms of politics. Yeah. But
that's true.
But so there's a lot of that. So a lot of style, but very little substance. Yeah. And I think it's like, you know, if and I also think that maybe the intention is to make it as is it inaccessible? I think it is inaccessible. I was about to say unaccessible. Inaccessible as possible so that people don't bother with it. And they're just like, oh, that's not my thing, whatever. While, you know, like, because I mean,
it's probably built to go over people's heads. In a sense.
Yeah. If I was in charge, that's totally how I would do things, just to make sure that no one ever really like stood to get in the way. I would just make it like super complicated and whatever. Just
it definitely feels like it's kind of intensified politics in day-to-day people's lives recently, though, in the last sort of year or so, especially with Trump coming into power.
Absolutely.
I think, like you say, though, it's completely superficial, but I think it's more prominent in everyone's lives now, I think. And it can't not be in your life, you know.
You know, again, with that sort of thing, it's like it's odd. It almost actually kind of frustrating, to be honest. Like looking at the way things have turned out, because what's happening here is sort of the demographic of people who you would think share your viewpoint on a lot of things haven't mobilized. Right. Like basically this whole shift is partly down to the inaction of that demographic.
And what specifically are you talking about?
Or just voting or being or making an effort to communicate with the people that did mobilize. Yeah. You know, if you look at it from a standpoint of the people who got what they wanted in terms of political gains in the past 2 years or whatever, what they do is they targeted a certain demographic of people. Now, around that demographic, there are fringes where, you know, there's like a Venn diagram of ideals which could be shared. Yeah. So you have some people who maybe not necessarily in that demographic voting for a similar cause. Like, I don't know, like for example, you had some people who voted for Brexit, who weren't racist or xenophobic or whatever. They voted for their own reasons. Curiously enough, they may have been financial, economic reasons or whatever reasons, or, you know. But the target audience was clearly the masses of people who had that leaning. Yeah. You know, I mean, we can argue that that's not the case, but I mean, if you look at, if you just kind of have a general conversation with people outside our thought bubbles or, you know, our echo chambers, that's usually kind of who you end up speaking to. And then you think, and then you speak to your own, like the people in your echo chamber, and you're kind of like, there's not very many of us. You realize how few of you maybe mobilized or how few of you acted when you have these conversations, when you step outside your comfort zone. And I think that like that's something that was definitely capitalized on. Yeah.
I think what you're saying with the sort of echo chamber was something you could see when you were in Dundee as well, because especially with Indie Ref, you know, the first sort of like the independence referendum, I thought for sure it was going to be yes, you know, like to leave, because when I was in Dundee at that time, it was just everyone was saying, right, you know, everyone was saying yes, every person that you spoke to, you know, but as soon as you went traveling up towards Aberdeen, you know, and you're on the motorway and
tide shifted,
and you see all the farmers who have the sign saying, you know, no. It's crazy.
You're like, hang on a minute, I thought everyone was in the same boat. Yeah.
I mean, I genuinely I think that was one of the biggest sort of disappointments I've had in everyone in the country at that time. You know, that was the first time. Obviously, the Brit exit was the second time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But there was a giant, like an overwhelming sense of just disappointment.
Yeah.
I woke up that morning genuinely like, shit, you know, this is going to have an effect on generations to come.
That's curious because I spoke to, who was it? I think I just got back from visiting family at Christmas, and I got in a taxi, and because I didn't miss last train. My train was late into Edinburgh, so I got a taxi. And in the taxi, this guy kind of like showed me all this propaganda and stuff like that. I call it propaganda because that's exactly what it was. Yeah. All these links to all these booklets and these websites to check out, which were very pro-independence.
Right.
And I was kind of like, this dude is like, whatever, like he's living in his own, like in his own existence right now. He's fairly convinced that this is what everyone else in Scotland is seeing, and everyone in Scotland is aware of and believing, and they're firm on the fact that like Scotland is going to leave the United Kingdom. Yeah. And I think I'm still kind of at a point where honestly, I think Scotland should leave, especially now. I'm not sure if it's ready to leave, just based on a couple of factors. I mean, I'm all for leaving, but I'm just not sure that right now is the right time. And now it's weird because what's happened is Scotland seems like before Brexit, it was in a better position to leave than it is now, which is crazy. And a lot of people are saying that, you know, they're kind of like, well, you know, look what's happened here. I also heard, this is like kind of dying off a bit, but I actually also heard some people apparently spite voted for Brexit. I don't know if this is true, and this is the thing, everyone obviously source needs to be checked and whatever, like don't go believing anything you hear on whatever. But I heard that there was some spite voting from people who, from yes voters, to be like, oh well, this is what happens when you kind of like, and I was like, why would you
heard
do
that as well.
that?
You know, I heard that as well. It's crazy. Like, you know, some people wouldn't vote to get something else out of it. Like they were just waiting so they could like be in a better position to get out of the UK.
Absolutely.
So they were like, I want them to leave. So then that makes we can sort of bargain our way into the EU. And I was like, don't play those games.
Yeah, exactly.
Like people, like Theresa May herself played a game with, you know, calling a general election, and she lost. Like, and looks terrible.
Egg on her face.
Completely.
Lots of egg on her face.
You know, the whole shebang on her face. She looks terrible. And she's like, I don't know what she's playing at. I think she probably sees herself as some sort of strong female character. Stable. You know, I always kind of say she thinks she probably is seen as some sort of Maggie Thatcher character, but she doesn't have the spine that Maggie Thatcher had. You know, even though she was a terrible person and did terrible things to this country, at least she really believed in what she was doing. Like Theresa May is just completely spineless, I think, and it's crazy. It's nothing to do with her being female either, you know.
Oh no.
It's just she's a terrible decision that this country made.
Do you know what I actually see her as? I actually see her kind of like Veep. like a less self-aware kind of like flailing version of Veep.
Right, okay.
Because I feel like what happened was there was just a power vacuum after Cameron was like, we made a mistake, and he just disappeared. And
he genuinely didn't want to leave either. He like was campaigning not to leave the EU.
And I was like, why did you call that stupid campaign then, you idiot?
Terrible.
But then everyone was like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then she just like, someone was like, Theresa, I think you should do it. And she was like, me? I don't think I'm quite. And then they just shoved her in. And now we're in this position where she's kind of like walking around smiling to people and trying to act like she knows what's going on. She's in full reign of things, but we can see that she's not. I kind of feel bad for her, to be honest, being in this position. Genuinely. Because imagine that, right? Imagine you're at work, right? Imagine you're at work and you're like, I don't know, like maybe assistant manager or something, and then for some random reason, you didn't even enjoy your job. You didn't even like it that much. But for some reason, your manager fell ill and everyone looked to you to step in into that role. Yeah. So now you're kind of like, you're not really that good at your job. You're just kind of about trying to make things happen the best way you can. You've got your own problems to deal with at home, whatever.
Well, put it this way. Imagine if you weren't a popular manager and then you called into a vote for all your employees to then see who they're going to vote into you being manager. It's your own bloody fault.
That gamble, do you know, for some weird reason, I don't think she took that gamble by herself. I think some people spurred her to take that gamble.
Definitely.
Just to see what was going to happen. And I think some people knew that she's going to fall on her face. Some people knew that. But they just wanted to just see what's going to happen. And I think maybe...
It was Boris Johnson.
Oh, him, by the way. Him. Right? Have you read this poem? There's a poem based on something he said when he was... I can't remember where he was. Was he... in North Africa somewhere? I think it was Libya.
They would let him in somewhere like that.
Oh, well, in his role as foreign secretary, he can go anywhere he wants. It doesn't matter whether they want him there. He just kind of shows up and is like, well, hello, everyone. I'm just clueless, bloody clueless. But he said something along the lines of like, Libya could be the next Dubai or something. I don't know if it was Tunisia or Libya.
I think it was maybe Tunisia.
And it was like, if you bury the bodies or something like that. What he was referring to was obviously like, if you hide the evidence of like... So someone wrote a poem about it, and I remember starring it. It was on Twitter, and it was just like really, really well stanzed poem about burying the bodies. And it was like every stanza ended with a line, if you just get rid of the bodies, if you and I read it, and I was kind of like, this dude, he just walks around like just fluffing his lines. Yeah. And I think he's representative of the old school. Like very representative of the old school, because now they're in a position where things are changing so quickly and they don't quite know how to handle it.
Yeah. I mean, socially it's changing like every single day.
Absolutely.
And the landscape's totally shifted. Yes. And politically that takes longer to catch up with the social consciousness, I guess. Yeah. Because there's loads of things in play that kind of stop you from turning a ship round so quickly, you know. It's going to take a while, but socially they're screwed. You know, people are starting, like the Grenfell thing. You know, that's something that people are not letting, you know, just letting slide.
Do you think this is going to get any real traction though? Do you think
if the McCanns can keep out the headlines, it might.
Well, so again, this is why I mentioned earlier about like it being very important for the public to kind of be aware of ways in which they're being shepherded. Yeah. Because like. You have that shift which you've mentioned, which is a very important shift. I'm very cynical about the potential for its impact. Yeah, the potential to change things, just because like human beings been like, can I swear on this channel?
You can do whatever you want.
Human beings been fucking up for a long time.
That's what I'm talking about.
They've been fucking up for a long time. You know what I mean? Like,
well, in the Bible it says we started off with fucking up. You know, like Adam and Eve.
Right?
Not that I believe that, but you know.
Yeah. Whatever that story is, you know.
It's in writing.
It says it there. The first two did it. You know. And but that fucking up has placed certain things, or has put certain things in place already. So that it's created like already like a hierarchy, like a structure. That structure advantages some people and disadvantages some people. The people who are being advantaged will want to keep things that way, in spite of how well they know that like other people are getting disadvantaged. So they're always going to meet that with resistance. For example, at the moment now, like, basically you see the way how like social justice warriors are getting like vilified and stuff like that.
The left,
the left is getting vilified, and you're like, okay, so if you take a step back from it and you ask yourself like a very simple question, so social justice warrior, the warrior bit's a bit extra, but social justice, well, let's say campaigner, advocate, whatever. When did that become a bad thing? Like, when did it become like considered to be a bad thing? You know,
I think it has sort of changed over since when it was first used. You know, social justice warriors. It was usually, what was the sort of, it was used in the early 2000s, but it wasn't called that. You know, there was people that was sort of, you know, I can't remember the name for it exactly, but it's been around for that while. But I think it has changed. You know, it's become something to jump on to seem like you are doing the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
But without actually affecting any change. You know, and any
false advocacy.
But there is campaigns that have, you know, great things that have came out of, you know, this whole Me Too thing.
True.
You know, which has started to like devour its own self because people are fighting within. But it all comes from a place of sort of good.
Yes.
But I think it just gets sort of just manipulated as well at the
Of
same
course.
time.
Of course. But the my questioning here is basically the fact that like we see that like even just the postulating, because I mean everyone like one of the biggest kind of issues that a lot of people have with SJWs is the fact that all they're doing is just posturing as like good people but not actually taking any action.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like everything has to kind of start somewhere. So it's like, why are people getting mad? 'Cause some people are like even taking a stance for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the way I see it, if there was less stuff to complain about,
right,
there'd be less complaining.
Yeah.
See what I mean? So like, in terms of like the feminist movement at the moment, which is really cool actually. I'm thinking, I've given this some thought recently, and the feminist movement is really cool right now because intersectional feminism has gained a lot of momentum. A lot of people kind of now aware that like you can't, like when you talk about feminism, it's not just about like your average like privileged person or whatever. It includes everyone. It includes people from, less advantaged backgrounds, from less advantaged maybe countries, ethnicities, etc., etc. So everyone is getting picked up and brought along, with that movement. And then you have a bunch of people who are kind of looking at that and just like still throwing out like the sexist jokes and stuff and getting annoyed because people say, like if people say, for example, like no, like all men are trash or whatever, and some people take it upon themselves to be like, oh well, yeah, this is like nonsense. Like you guys are like calling out all men.
I mean, people who sort of shout on men's rights when you're talking about women's rights.
Oh, that is so dumb.
But it's this tit for tat though. It's like I'm not saying that I think it's sort of very. I think it's a wide subject, like the feminism. I don't think there's just one singular feminism, and it's changed drastically over the last 40 years.
No, not at all.
And the sort of reincarnation as it is just now is, I mean, it was probably born on the internet as well. This sort of recent one, so it's a strange time. Like we're trying to like. All the things that they're saying is completely correct, and all the things that women have been through, and even just now with Hollywood as well, we get a sample, like a really sort of under the microscope sample of what can happen when people have ultimate and power,
absolutely,
and money,
yes,
and if you stretch that out over the population as well, like that's gonna it happens in small sort of microaggressions, like that type of thing. I'm doing this because microaggressions, I don't really like those words. Okay. But those things exist.
Out of curiosity, why? Out of curiosity, what's your issue with that word microaggression?
I'm not sure. I think it's sort of aggression seems like it's a sort of a violent act.
Okay.
And a violent act is something that's different. It becomes blurred because we should have sort of legal lines. Obviously, there's social lines as well. But when it comes to sort of like microaggressions and whatnot, you're sort of making not light of actual sort of aggression. Okay. But you're sort of diluting it slightly, and it becomes, obviously you should treat everyone with respect. Okay. If you feel like you've been taken advantage of, that's fair enough. But like, I just feel like it dilutes the water slightly. Those words. I'm not saying like, you shouldn't. If you feel like you're offended, that's fine. But it doesn't mean you're right. Yeah. Okay. But that's, I don't know. That's me trying to explain. No.
That's an interesting take on it. So I think I kind of get where you're coming from.
It's trying to give a word to something that doesn't really sort of need to be. It's just courtesy to not sort of say things, that can be construed as sort of,
So why do you think that they've tried to give a word to it?
Well, obviously it's something that's happening.
I'm asking you the question now.
No, that's fine, because not often people quiz me on my sort of viewpoints, and it's good to sort of like figure out why I. Yeah. It's not something I believe, because I'm currently, I'm still shaping my ideas about everything. I'm not a woman. I'm not someone who's, black in America or a single female or anything like that. So I can't like, but it doesn't mean that we're not all intelligent enough to sort of see where they're coming from, as well, and understand. Just because, I don't have a vagina doesn't mean I can't sort of, talk about it. Okay. And the thing is, we shouldn't shut down conversation. That's the thing.
Okay. I agree. I agree that that's very important.
And microaggressions can be used those words can be used to shut down conversation.
Okay. So do you think we should come up with an alternative word?
I don't think it's a matter of alternative words.
Okay.
I think it's just a way of sort of being able to talk through it as opposed to sort of saying something to stop you from talking about it.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's interesting. So like,
because like the word Nazi now is so like it's so used fragrantly, you know, and it's not a good word.
No.
And it shouldn't be like real. I'm not saying there aren't people who are white skinheads and supremacists and Nazis, but to use it just like in general on like campuses and stuff, it's diluting the word as well. And you say it to someone who you don't want to converse with as well sometimes. You know, there are going to be people who say it who don't really understand what they're saying either, you know.
Okay. So firstly, my like point of view with regards to microaggressions, I think this is one of the bigger issues that a lot of people have with the left is the fact that like a lot of the kind of SJW kind of movement have coined all these phrases.
Yeah.
Now, these phrases are very obviously used to describe things which people do all the time, but no one's ever thought to come up with a word for. Right. And I think the reason that they've come up with words for them is so that they can be like, that thing there, that's not very cool to do. Now, sometimes like people also gotten a bit trigger happy with like the words they've coined or whatever. And I think microaggression might be one of those words because I'm kind of like, I don't know about the microaggression describing as an act of violence is very, because violence does imply something that's maybe like
illegal.
Well, not necessarily illegal, but malicious.
Okay.
Now, that also kind of implies an element of conscious.
Yeah.
Like an element of your acting conscious to do that, to carry out that act.
Conscientiously doing
absolutely
that act.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then again, it could also describe sort of the scale of that action.
Yeah.
Because like you could like if you fell over and you pushed something, no one's gonna say you violently knocked it over. If it says you violently knocked it over, that means you went out of your way to like you know apply for something. So
there are degrees of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe it's kind of like rather than using the word aggression, it's more of like a thing of ignorance.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people kind of do all these things like day to day without considering where they're coming from and how someone else is gonna react to it. So ultimately, I guess it boils down to respect, and so it's you know if you say something to someone and they feel a certain way about it, you then think, okay, well maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I should have said it in a different way, or maybe I should have considered more how that person can feel about what I said. It's just you know simple respecting their right to be and their right to feel how they want to feel about something. If I said something to someone and they kind of like got offended, I'd be like, oh, like that was definitely a mistake on my part. I didn't intend to offend you, you know, and then we see where we take it from there. I try to maybe avoid saying that thing, or maybe you know explain what I was trying to say, explain that I didn't mean it in an offensive way. I think a lot of what's happening at the moment is that like that behavior is getting pointed out, and rather than stepping up to understand where the opposite side is coming from, everyone's just like, oh, it means I can't do what I want to do anymore, or say what I want to say anymore. And you know, like,
I think Britain's one of these places that has this sort of this working class. It's not really similar in any other countries, and I think that's where a lot of this sort of lies still.
I would like you to break this down further because I've always found this a bit curious, like this about British society. So
there is a sort, the whole sort of, I mean, there is a sort of middle class. Everyone's middle class essentially, you know, and then there's like the extreme poverty, but everyone's middle class. I think there's a working class that ties into that. That's the backbone of this country, and they're sort of. I think they live in a sort of not a vacuum, but a see-through bubble, you know, and they can see what's going on, but they can't really sort of take in and download what everyone's saying and the social change. And I think they still sort of, like you say, like you have this stereotype of workies, you know, people who are, you know, joiners, bricklayers, all these types of guys. There's those worksite guys where all that sort of guy banter stems from, you know. And I think they don't realize what's going on, you know, in the world and just the UK at this point. And I think that's going to be when there's this massive clash, you know.
Okay.
And I think it's starting to just happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because women are not going to take like these types of people just whistling at them when they're in a van, you know. And that's one of the stereotypes. Is a guy in a white van whistling, you know. I know it's happened to Laura, my girlfriend, plenty of times. I know plenty of girls that it's happened to as well. And I think that is what is coming to a head in this country. Like we have to change that sort of old working class, you know, lads on tour type mentality.
Okay.
Lads, you know.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
Mentality, but it's hard to sort of extrapolate that from the culture. You know, how do you take that out and get rid of it, you know, without cutting off, you know, the tumor, you know?
A good history lesson, I think. I think in terms of education, it would help people to know more. And I think that's another thing that's really scary, is that like I feel like some people don't want people to know more, to be aware. I was actually speaking to someone about this like 2 days ago, and I was saying that it's weird because like for a country that's had such a global influence over the course of history, almost on an almost day-to-day basis, I'm astonished by how inward-looking it is, how insular it is, and I don't think it's one of those weird ones where I kind of like, and obviously this is debatable because like who am I to be like, oh well, you shouldn't do this or whatever, but like I sometimes have that standpoint of like I don't feel like British people should be allowed to look inwards, like, or they should not be allowed to not be aware of the influence that Britain has had on the world. I feel like it's an important part of British history. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, like all the bad stuff, not just some of it or whatever, like all the bad stuff.
They don't teach a lot of the good stuff either because it ties directly into the
bad stuff, right? Which is crazy. So
I think that's important though.
Yeah.
Like I think we're like this mini sort of America because geographically we're an isolated island.
Yes.
And I think America's like always seen as like the far west and isolated between these two oceans as well. So it's a bigger version of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's led to this sort of inward looking. And I think Theresa May and this government that's in and coming out of the EU is only going to just exacerbate that, you know, that inwards looking. You know, we're not going to want immigrants to come in, you know, and it's going to just make that we're just going to be more ignorant to all that sort of stuff.
I don't think they're operating on the same level as like the rest of us.
Yeah.
I generally don't think that's what they're doing.
Who?
Like Theresa May and basically like the quote unquote elites. Like, because I think that what they're seeing here is a very fantastic opportunity. If I was in that position anyway, what I'd be seeing Brexit as is a fantastic opportunity.
You'd look good in this
to why thank you. A fantastic opportunity to create a tax haven.
Right.
You know, like, so basically to figure out some way to bring big businesses in, lots of tax breaks at the expense of the average person. And then what will happen is I don't know. It's a weird one. It's almost like the chicken's coming home to roost in the most peculiar way.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's that inward lookingness that's brought us to this point.
And maybe we're at a tipping point where it could go either way, I guess. You know, I think America has went one way on the, you know, with Obama.
Oh yeah.
You know, it came to sort of a head when it was either going to be Trump or business as usual Hillary. You know? So I think there was a sort of tipping point there, and it's went down the Donald Trump route, which is crazy. I think that's our sort of future maybe, and I think if we sort of let what's happening happen, it's only going to go down that path, which is going to be terrible for the UK. I think we have to sort of, how do we bring it back from that sort of that conservative tipping point?
Definitely, like, I think education was going to make the biggest difference here. I actually think the youth are more forward thinking than we give them credit for. Like, I don't know why I'm saying the youth like that. I don't think I'm that old, but generally, sometimes I'll speak to teenagers or like, just like people who are younger.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of kind of like annoying, bratty, like entitlement going on, but occasionally I speak to someone who's really, really conscious of what's happening, you know, and the kind of chat from their end is very like, you know, I'm very aware of the position that like we're in as a country, and it'd be handy for us to maybe do something to get out of it, you know. I was speaking with someone, it was kind of like, I just asked, sometimes I like to ask, if I'm trying to get my point across, I ask questions rather than like say what I think. So I was kind of like, they were talking about sort of the situation with like, with Brexit and immigration and stuff like that, and you know, the reason why that happened. And I was kind of saying, okay, well, so, we all know that the problem with Brexit was like one of the biggest problems anyway was immigration. Yeah. And was all, you know, all this stuff like we couldn't control our own borders or something like that. And I asked, I said, do you know what EU legislation states with regards to immigration? Like if you had to look at it by any chance, you know? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, okay, it's curious. The legislation states that if you're moving to another country, you have to have sufficient resources to provide for yourself in that country. Yeah. You have to have a job lined up. Yeah. Basically, you're not supposed to be a burden onto that country if you move in. Yeah. Now, it's up to the host nation to enforce that legislation. Right. But it's not enforced here because of a really like shoddy governmental system. Really? Yeah. So if you look at it that way, because this is stuff you can look up online. Yeah. Like this is part of actual European Union legislation. So it's not Brussels' fault that immigration isn't well handled. It's the UK government's fault.
I never knew that.
You know, like
that's terrible.
So, but then that was something which was easy to sell to a bunch of people and be like, well, we're doing this wrong. So I mentioned that, and then I was like, okay, and that was just then, and they were like, okay, that's interesting. I'll go have a look at that. And then another conversation later on, and this is one of those situations, like I mentioned earlier, about when you step out of your echo chamber and your bubble gets burst. I was sat with a friend at, was it the Counting House? It was the Counting House. That's the one near...
it's a Dundee's.
Near McDonald's, isn't it?
Establishment.
That's correct. It is a Dundee establishment. We were sat there just chilling, and we heard like a loud like noise. So we looked over, and there was a gentleman who was like sat, and he was like having a couple of drinks, and he came over to us. And then he's like started asking where we're from and stuff like that. And like, that's one of those things I'm kind of like neither here or there about. I just listen for the tone. So if they're like, where are you from? And it's like a very like, okay, you know, you're not from here, obviously. But if it's like an inquisitive, where you from? Yeah. So he had that. He had the inquisitive one. So I was like, oh, hey, this guy's probably cool. Then he pulled up a chair and sat next to us, offered to buy us drinks and stuff. And I was like, no, we're good. We're just having a chat between ourselves. We didn't really invite you over. He just took it upon himself to come and sit here. And then he
looked at him, he's going to come over and speak to you.
Pretty much. And then he starts asking what we're doing, like what we do and stuff like that. So we start telling him what we do. And it's obviously like, we basically like corner him because we just make it clear that we are contributing to the economy. Thank you very much kind of thing.
Really?
Like, yeah, basically. So it's like that. And then...
Do you think he was sort of trying to speak to you to figure out what you were doing?
Well, yeah. He definitely had the energy. It was, you know, sometimes it's ambiguous. Yeah. And when it's ambiguous like that, I don't try to jump to conclusions, but it was very clear what he was doing. And then he brandished the paper. Yeah, he had like 5 different papers. He brandished paper. It was like, you see this nonsense over here? And they pointed to this like refugee situation over in Italy. And he was talking about, you know, how like the refugee boats, like the captains and the crew are in with the mafia. And there's some sort of like exchange of currency going on to get them, you know, over here, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay. I was like, that's a damn shame. It's really horrendous news. Yeah. And it was like, yeah, because they're just coming over here to get their free houses and stuff and like whatever. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I was like, yeah, you're right. That's true. They're coming over here to get free houses. And I was like, why do you think they're coming over here to get free houses? Yeah. And it was like, because their countries suck. Yeah. And I was like, okay, why their countries suck? And it looked at me. It was like, because they've got horrible governments. And it was like, okay, why do they have horrible governments if they're supposed to be so rich in like minerals and all that kind of stuff? Like, why would they have horrible governments? And he didn't say anything. And I was like, okay, well, I'll let you think about that one. I'm going to go get a drink and we'll talk about this later on. And what I was trying to draw attention to there is that like, there's a reason for any sort of migration. Yeah. When I got back, I asked him, I was like, okay, so like, why are they coming here? Why aren't they going like somewhere else? And it was like, cause here's better. It's like, okay.
Is that the best he could come up with?
Yeah, that's what he said. So it was like, he's like, so here's better. And I was like, oh, here's better. Cool. So why is here better? It's because we've got money. We've got, well-developed system. It's like, cool. Where'd that money come from? I was like, trade. He said trade. And I was like, what'd you sell? Selling what? Like, selling what?
Watches.
And it was like, and then he went to talk about whiskey, and I was like, nah, it wasn't that. It wasn't what? It's like, no, it wasn't that. And it was like, okay, well, and I was like, okay, so you want them to go back? He was like, yeah, I want them to go back. I was like, cool, fair enough. I can understand why you don't want you want people who weren't from your country.
Yeah.
If you feel like they're coming in to be, like a tax on your resources and all that kind of stuff and taking your jobs, and like, I understand why you want them to go back. I was like, do you feel this way about like all immigrants and stuff? And he was like, nah, not all the time. I don't mind you guys coming in, because at least you guys come in when you guys, you do something, you generate stuff for the economy. You have intellectual, like you do whatever it is you do. My colleague, for example, he's a student, so he was a PhD student. I was like, okay, cool.
Dundonians coming into our bloody country. Man.
So I was like, okay. And then he said something. I can't remember what he said something
but
about.
He literally said that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He referenced, I think he referenced like Pakistani shops, or Indian shops, whatever, or Indian, like one of those communities, either Indian or Pakistani community. I don't remember what it was. I think it was Indian community. And it was like, I was like, yeah, but okay, but they're doctors here.
Yeah.
Or, they are like not just doctors, they do everything. Obviously,
like the backbone of the NHS is
absolutely
these Indian and Pakistani guys.
So
everyone, not guys.
Everyone, not just them. So I was like, not only that, they're in every fabric of society.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so if you want them to go back,
back where?
It's like, you want to send them back? He was like, yeah, okay, so you want to go home, like to India? I was like, cool, okay, so they go home to India.
Yeah.
Are you happy for them to take all the stuff that they brought with them? And it was like, well, yeah, that's what going home entails. And I was like, cool. So they can take all the food, all the recipes and stuff that they brought over, because multiculturalism is such a horrible thing. I was like, cool, you can take that. You remember those like jewels in like the crown of your queen down south? They're not from here. Can they take them back as well? Because technically speaking, it's like what I was like,
where are they from? South Africa?
No, the Kohinoor, the crown jewel, is Indian.
Oh right,
it's Indian.
That's crazy.
It's in the queen's crown.
I thought it was a blood diamond.
Oh no. There are a couple of those were like knocking about, but I was like, and then he looked at me. I was like, if we are being sort of very straight up about what's happening here, it's like, what do you think gave? Not necessarily your forefathers, but what gave them the right to go to someone else's place?
Yeah.
And take that diamond and bring it back here and put it in a crown. Like, who gave them that right?
Yeah.
It's like, they should give it back. I mean, when we look at it that way, it's not there. It was never theirs to take. It was in another country. It was in someone else's land, and they took it. And he looked at me, and I was like, what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to start, if you want to take everything, if you really want to...
You could, chase your tail all day long,
Absolutely.
trying to describe to this person what's been going on for, centuries. Why do you think he sort of pointed out the paper to you? Do you think he was trying to get you to sort of maybe agree with him, or he was trying to goad you into like saying something, do you think? So you could have a good old argument.
I don't think he was ready for an argument. I think he definitely wanted the agreement, and
so he'd be like, "Oh, this guy agreed with me on all this.
Yeah,
that means I'm right."
It's kind of like waving, like this is a very like annoying thing that I think older people tend to do. Like, obviously, unfortunately, like the older white men tend to get singled out for this, but I think that like a lot of older people tend to do it, and it's just like, kind of wave their opinion in your face and expect you to agree with them, and like they take it as like. Is basically like rule of law, kind of like my opinion matters and here's why it matters and like you should listen to it and stuff. And what's funny is that whenever it's like an opinion that you don't agree with, like they don't ever seem prepared or ready to handle that. They don't know what
to do with that.
Absolutely. So that's kind of like, I find that fun.
Yeah.
Because then I'll just start asking the questions like, so what do you think about this? And like, okay, so if that's the case, then like, what do we do with this?
But that generation is completely sort of, if you look at it on a world and global intelligence scale, are completely sort of, on a cockroach level of intelligence, because they were born before the internet.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Like, your scope was,
and I'm not saying
your neighborhood kind of thing.
That's why you should be ignorant, or it's not an excuse for anything like that. But still, we're dealing with people that are still proto-human, and I'm not saying we're like, because we have the advantage of growing up with the internet.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that we're more, to use the terrible word, woke.
Yeah. Oh God.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we're dealing with people who are essentially, troglodytes, and we're sort of tapped into a social nerve of some sort, and we can sort of feed off it and know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And they have no base of contact with anything like that, really. I mean, obviously, if you go on the internet, you're not going to see what's going on either. Because if you're on Facebook and you've got your 3 friends on Facebook who are all like 50 or 60 who,
share the exact same views. Boom,
like
echo
cat
chamber.
Pictures or something like that. Or
man. Cat pictures the best.
Dundee United pictures of like from 19 Oatcake, something like that.
19 Oatcake.
But like you say, it's an echo chamber, and it's hard to get out of that. And I think maybe you could probably feel isolated, I guess.
Yeah.
But not in a not because there's these damn immigrants moving in, just like in your mind, I think you probably you don't know what's going on, so you're probably a bit scared. But at the same time, I don't know. I think we're at a tough time because obviously there's this older generation mixed with us, and it's completely different bases now. Like,
yes.
I mean, we're nothing like those people that grew up then,
Do you think a bigger effort should be made then in terms of inclusion?
I don't know. Like is that an answer to it?
Maybe.
Should we?
I think it would help.
I mean, the first one would be to include immigrants, but is the opposite way to include people of that generation into those immigrants?
Not just people of that generation. So I think that again, like the SJW movement, I think that like a lot of their language,
problematic. I'm joking.
No, you went there straight away, but that's the first one that came into your mind. I always go with that because that's what you were thinking. That's definitely what you were thinking. So we'll take that and run. But in terms of the language that's used and the way that they like relate to the people who don't think on the same level as them, sometimes I feel like unfortunately what that does alienate people a bit. Yeah. And I think that it would be important. It'd be a good step forward in terms of it'd be a good step forward to attempt to try to include more people. Yeah. And looking at it and being like, you know what, like that way of treating people, it never was okay. No. I mean, it was socially accepted, but it was never okay. And we're all trying to do better, and we'd like to come and join us in attempting to do better, rather than being like, you said this, and you're therefore this word, which I have in my like glossary of, you know what I mean? It's definitely trying to bring people along. Yeah.
And we have to make the distinction that people have done a bad thing, they're not bad people.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
And that's something that we should sort of promote as well amongst everyone. Is instead of just chastising people to the extent, I mean, if they've done something incredibly offensive, then that's a different story. That's on them. Yeah. But I guess when it's these sort of microaggressions, like we should sort of not babysit, but sort of. But then is that blaming the victim, by saying something like that?
Oh no! I don't think it is. I don't think it is. It's trying to get on side. Like if you look at the kind of kids who got punished for when they like messed up or whatever, compared to the kids who got told why messing up was like not ideal. Yeah, there's a difference in terms of response and uptake. Yeah, and you do get a generally more positive response from a kid who understands without any sort of like aggression or whatever, why what they've done is not okay to do. That applies to kids. Yeah. And if you kind of like scale up that mentality in terms of the way a lot of people are thinking now and reacting to being chastised and told that like what they're doing is like silly. Yeah. A lot of it's very childish. I can read people like online kind of like coming at like like let's take the transgender movement for example, or people who identify as non-binary. Yeah. And you see a lot of kind of like mock aggression, like how dare you assume my gender and stuff like that. Like that's like coming from people who maybe are aware of that, like that aggression towards people who assume gender. Rather than so all that's happened there is they've received aggression towards them for like assuming a gender, and they've just like they've just disregarded it and turned into mockery.
Yeah.
Whereas if maybe the explanation was made that like,
is that someone saying that to someone who's, you know, transgendered, or is it just someone amongst their friends having a laugh, you know, like, oh, don't assume my gender? Or,
well, I think it's,
is there a place for one, you know, or the, you know, is there a place for that?
I think that, well, it definitely is. So in terms of making fun, maybe of like,
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. So in terms of making fun of behavior that could be considered like disrespectful, like, I think it's kind of important to be mindful of people wanting to be whatever it is that they want to be.
Yeah.
There's limits to it in terms of like at the expense of other people or whatever. But like, if someone is on their plane of existence, they're operating and they're living what they consider their best possible life, and they're not harming anyone.
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't even have to be like enriching the society, as long as they're not doing anything that's like, because that's the least we can all do, you know, like not be detrimental to society.
Yeah.
And they're just doing their thing.
But I guess when you're sort of encouraging legislation, then that's something that's changing in society. You know, and that's not something that's, you know, we've never had like long debates about it.
No.
So, like in Canada, there's the Bill C-16 or 18. And essentially, if you misgender someone, whether it was by accident or on purpose, you can be charged with sort of a hate crime as well.
That's news to me.
Yeah. And that's I'm not a big fan of Trudeau, obviously. That's him bringing it in, you know.
Huh.
It's just crazy. And
I think that is a bit crazy, yeah.
That's starting to seep into America now, you know, that sort of, on the campuses, they're trying to get these petition for these type of legislation to come in.
And this is a problem, because then if that happens and that gets pushed, then we get more Trumps or more Trump types. I think that definitely, like, this is what I was saying earlier, there should definitely be like more inclusion.
Yeah.
More room for people to make mistakes and stuff. Because like, yeah, you could easily misgender someone. You know, you don't know who you're dealing with now, and so it requires like a higher level of awareness.
Yeah.
And
use it. Go and use that word.
What word was I going to use?
The woke word.
Oh, the woke word. No, not even that. It just I think it asks more of people.
Yeah. Like
navigating the newer kind of social plane requires more awareness from everyone. You just have to switch on basically and be aware that people are different to you, and
even the people that are sort of are discovering that they're different in ways that wasn't able to be put into words before.
This
is new for them
Absolutely,
as well. You know, it's not just something that it's been bubbling up in them for years. I think we're all at a crossroads where everything's completely new.
Yeah.
Especially with socially as well. And I think everyone has to be just aware that we're all kind of just having to go through this together
and figure out what's what, you know, like we're all, enjoying that difference, embracing it, and trying to be respectful about it. You know, even if you don't agree with it, there's still ways of being respectful about it.
Do you, just to sort of like segue a little, just to sort of bring it back to that guy who was like bringing the newspaper up, do you find people find an excuse to sort of bring up your color a lot in conversation? Like, do they try and speak to you about things like by like, oh, you're you know, I'll speak about like a rap group or something
all the
and
time.
They try and like everyone when you're out on you know, drinking or whatever
all the time.
It must be frustrating.
So do
you think that's people trying to flex their quote unquote wokeness by being like
their social awareness?
By trying to bring up conversations that leads to sort of, I mean, I remember the conversation we had all those years ago was something to that, not you being black, but the things that you'd sort of maybe experienced in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that was the conversation we had at that point. And that was like years ago at this point. So it wasn't something that was bringing up because I wanted to like flex that muscle. It was because you've been brought up differently from me, and I've been brought up differently from you. And let's sort of figure out where we've both came from and sort of be able to just, you know, approach other people in life with the same sort of like openness as well.
Absolutely. Well, so this goes way, way, way back. So I came to live in the UK with my parents in 2003.
Right.
And secondly,
really?
Yeah,
Is that
man.
how long you've only been in Scotland? I thought you were just...
No. So lived in Scotland and England, actually.
Oh, right. Okay.
But came to Scotland in 2003, and I was the only... I think at the time, I was like... Was I the only black kid in my school?
Probably.
There's either one of us or two of us. Can't remember. I'm reasonably sure that like in secondary school, there was only one of us. I was the only black kid in my school.
Yeah.
And like all my classmates and stuff like that were always asking me about stuff, you know, like pertaining to home and, you know, whether we had like lions in the back garden and stuff like that. Now, that shit was funny. That shit was funny. No, we did. We actually did. Leopards. But that shit was funny. And I was kind of open to it at the time, but then they always became this irritating like push for me to like do stuff that was like black, like rap or shit like that. And I remember like finding it really annoying. Yeah. And I guess in a weirdly weird way, I kind of like, which is really weird, I oddly revolted against that by not doing that and like sigging towards kind of like heavier music and stuff like that. So when people would ask me what I listen to and make that easy generalization of, I bet you listen to rap and stuff. And then I would like mention Sixth or something like that. And they'd be like, what's that? And I'd be like, and then I'd play them like Blind Street Bloom and they'd be like, what the fuck is this? You know? And I enjoyed throwing people that curveball.
It feels kind of similar to, sorry to interject, Tobin, what's the guitarist?
Tosin Abasi.
Yeah, like he's kind of feels like a similar sort of background, even though he was American.
Yeah.
But he kind of was like trying to break down those sort of stereotypes, I guess. And he played like he's playing metal jazz essentially with his
pretty
fingers,
much.
And he's amazing.
Fantastic guitarist.
Continue. You know, like he broke those sort of those stereotypes of what, you know, a black person should do in America. I guess.
And everyone's always like, oh, like who's playing that? I remember when he first like shot out, and everyone's like, who is this guy? This amazing black guitarist. And there's another guy now who's joined the ranks. Another black guy who plays. He also plays like a 7-string. I can't remember his name, but he was on Music Radar's website like a couple of weeks ago. He was also in like a prog band with like disgusting legato. Like his legato is stupid.
Tobin's just crazy as well, though.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so back to this. So I get all those questions, and I think looking back then, that was just like innocent stuff.
Yeah.
I think in that sphere where everyone's that young and they're meeting someone who they've not interacted with before. Yeah. That curiosity is only natural. So I wouldn't look back on it and be like and get like irritated or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think now when I meet people who are like maybe my age, maybe I'm expecting a bit more.
Yeah.
Not in a huge way. Not like, oh, this is like an axiom and you guys have to absolutely respect the fact that like I may not be into all the stuff that you expect like black guys to do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I make fun with it, you know, or make fun of it rather. So like you know, I'll just like throw little bits and they're like, what, you thought I had like a pet cheetah or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just to sort of self-deprecate.
Exactly,
sort of,
yeah.
I mean, that was something that I've kind of came across in my lifetime when I've met sort of people who were black in Scotland. They always kind of throw jokes out there to sort of like soften the ground a little bit. Sometimes it's a bit awkward because it's like you don't have to do that at my company because like it's cool, you know. It's like
that's because you and also like a small. It's small. It's not a big number of people, but you know, a small number of people have that mindset, and that will depend on your upbringing or where you're from. But that thing which you're talking about, that tendency to throw these things out there to soften the ground, that is definitely like a social skill which is learned from like a teenage when you're getting accustomed to being in these situations where maybe you're the only black person. Yeah. So you have to kind of balance that and be ready for just be ready to handle people basically. And handle the fact that everyone is not gonna like approach this black person with the same kind of energy.
I think I mean not obviously to the same extent, but I used to do that that was a tactic for me as well because I moved around a lot. And
I heard about this. Yeah. I heard about this. Yeah.
And well, initially in Scotland, obviously, but that was one of my tactics. Is I would always like comment about something physically to sort of be self-deprecating, and then no one really sort of picks on you. Yeah. They know that it's not something that you're worried about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, like one was always like my chin. Like it was always like it's a strong chin. And I would
do you know what? I've not noticed. What are you talking about?
Like the
what? surprising me.
I have a defined chin, and that was something that I would always like say before anyone else said, and it would
get in like
soften
quickly.
the ground, and then it means that people see me as not sort of worried about like anything that's physical about me.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not the same thing, you know, obviously, but it was a tactic that I used, so I get where that comes from. And is it something that you're still conscious of now when, you know, people sort of like, do you do it still, or is it something that you go, no, I don't care?
That's a good question. I still have to read the room. So I still have to be kind of aware of like what my audience is. That's weird. That's crap as an audience, but sometimes it genuinely feels like that. Like if you go into certain social circles, you're kind of like, can I while out here, or can I be myself? Or do I have to kind of just like read what everyone's doing first? And I do find myself adapting like very, very quickly. If I'm in like a circle where everyone kind of knows what's going on and I'm it's like really chill, then I kind of act like mostly myself. If I'm in a situation where there's like maybe a lot of old people, maybe people who kind of feel uneasy around like black people based on what they've been exposed to, what their impression of black people is, which it would surprise you, there's still a lot of that. I
know someone that told me that says that they get uncomfortable around black people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but he's like a nice guy. Yeah. Like this is one of these people that's part of that generation where they're like, you know, the workies type. And I was like, I don't get this. Like, I don't get how someone else can just feel this from someone else and interacting with them with a different skin color. Yeah. And it was like an uneasiness. It wasn't like they felt bad towards them, but it was just like, I don't know how to sort of, and
like speak to or relate to.
I completely was shocked by that.
Yeah. Like, I'm ready for that. Like always. I'm always like, I always have that at the back of my mind. Like there's going to be people who are not comfortable with you. Yeah. And it's not even like, sometimes it's not in a negative way.
So weird. It was so weird that that's still a thing, you know? It's like, yeah. But do you think maybe because it's something in the back of your mind that then affects your actions?
Kind of. So, I mean, for example, if you go to do something where I'm in that environment, like I mentioned, to the older people who maybe aren't that comfortable with the black person, whatever, I will like speak a certain way. So my accent actually becomes like a bit more posh. Yeah. Just remind them like, I'm a fucking sophisticated motherfucker. Y'all better recognize. You know what I mean? And then I almost like pin myself into a corner because then they come up and be like, "Oh, you have you're really well spoken," and I'm like, "Oh, fuck, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that." Yeah, they go down that path. Yeah, and then you have to like back that up as well and explain, you know, why your English is good. And you're like, I went to school and paid attention and watched a lot of TV, like everyone else who has, you know, a developed accent, but. It is definitely that thing of like, of being aware and just like knowing how to manage stuff. And you know what? I don't even get like too annoyed at people. Like I think when I was a lot younger, it kind of felt unfair. And like some people kind of look at you and they're like, oh, why are you like, I get this from some people sometimes, kind of like, oh yeah, well, like black people or minorities or whatever, they're always like acting like the victim, whatever. But if you look at it at face value, if you are in a different country where you're not a majority and you get treated a certain way, it's very easy to feel like that.
And about something that you can't change.
Something that you can't change.
It's completely nothing to do with you. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So like...
No, I don't think any child should sort of go through that. You know, it's a tough thing.
Now, it's on to the next thing. So the reason I'm not mad at like when people give me the teenagers is because like everyone's got bias. Like everyone's got bias. And this is the thing, because like a lot of behaviors are based on that. Yeah.
It's an evolutionary process as well, you know.
Exactly. What's kind of annoying sometimes though is how that sometimes gets construed or misconstrued rather as like automatic racism. Yeah. But
it's like the Sex at Dawn guy. Have you read that book? Basically, he said we're all programmed to be monogamous. So he was like, when he wrote this book, he thought like not monogamous,
polygamous.
Yeah, like loads of wives and do whatever you want. So people thought that was an excuse to just, you know, cheat. Yeah. Because he was saying like through evolutionary processes that we were meant to be in these groups that were polygamous during, you know, the hunter-gatherer times.
Okay.
And then he got a lot of stick for it because guys were just like, so kind of the similar thing, but it's like, you know, you could be just, you know, it's not... Biological and evolutionary processes are not excuses to be racist.
No, absolutely not. So the difference between like someone who's racist and not racist is how they handle that bias. Yeah. And I think that not everyone, but a lot of people want to believe that they are decent people.
Yeah.
Right? So decency, I mean, you're not going to see this if you look it up in dictionary, but basically I think that one of the obvious parts of decency is treating everyone fairly.
Yeah.
No matter, what they're about, where they're from, all that kind of thing, as long as they're not like a total like raging dickhead. But some people forget that.
Yeah.
When it comes to handling their bias, and it shows, and you're kind of like, I thought you were different, kind of thing. Like, not thought you were different, but I didn't know you were gonna come at me like that.
Yeah,
and that's kind of disappointing.
I think we should also be able to recognize that everyone is different.
Yes,
we're not all equal, but not on this plane where it should be used against someone to stop them from doing anything.
Absolutely.
In this world. Like if you understand that they're from, they started off differently in this life, then I think we would be more sort of open. I think the equality thing can be sort of, it's a vague brush to put on society sometimes.
It's lazy.
And I think it's too all-encompassing where a lot of people are going to be left behind because they're not coming up to a standard, I guess.
They're not fitting that, kind of distribution curve of what normal tends to be or equal tends to be. This is also another reason why I have a problem with that phrase, I don't see color. Yeah. I have a big problem with that phrase because everyone uses it. Not everyone, obviously. Like whenever I hear it used, it's like people telling you that they're not racist.
Well, they're trying to show you they're woke as fuck.
Yeah, right. But
sorry, you're black. I never noticed.
What's curious is like a lot of people do say that. Not necessarily just SJWs, but a lot of people like if you're in a taxi or speaking to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I don't see color. I'm like,
well, you're colorblind.
Like you blind motherfucker? Like, why do you walk into traffic then? I'm kidding. But
is it because you can't see the?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, I was like, that's no.
It's disingenuous.
Totally. It's like, no, open your eyes and see color. See that I'm different, but treat me properly. Yeah. Treat me like you treat anyone else.
Realize you're different and don't assume.
Yeah. Basically.
That's one of the things I think is sort of not promoted enough is to realize. I think that's one of the sort of polarizing issues of sort of equality is that everyone isn't equal, and that's something that you people are failing to factor into the equality part of it. Is that we have to realize that we have to sort of bring people up. Yes. To that level, maybe if they can, but they should have the opportunity to do so.
This fine line between equality and equity.
Yeah,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
I've not heard that one before.
Yeah, that's another whole thing we could kind of really get into. But again, just recognizing people are different to you, and then figuring out how to handle it from there is, I think, super super important. I think that's one of the ways that. If the younger generation coming up can see that, then it's definitely a good step in the right direction for us, all of us. Yeah. Because I mean, I'll be very honest. I have my biases as well. Yeah. I'm one of the people that I'm biased against usually is
gingers probably.
No. Oh, that's funny you mentioned that, right? That's funny you mentioned that because when I came here, one of my first friends was a ginger guy. Probably the first friend I made, really. Was it primary school, secondary school? I don't remember. It's secondary school. I think it was secondary school. First friends I made was a ginger guy. Remember his name?
Ginge.
And no, it wasn't Ginge. It wasn't Ginge. Wasn't Ginge. But I remember kind of hanging out with him and stuff at school after lessons or whatever. We'd sit down at at lunchtime and eat together and stuff like that. And someone asked me why I was friends with him, and I was like, because he's a good guy, he's really sound, got a good chat, he's and they're like, I was like, why? What's wrong with him? And they're like, he's ginger.
What?
And I remember being I was 12, 13 at the time, and I remember this blowing my mind, my unfamiliar mind. I was like, you guys are racist towards your own people? What's going on? What do you mean he's ginger? He's just a guy. What do you mean he's ginger? And they were like, oh, yeah, no gingers and stuff. I was like, what?
That's weird.
Are you tripping, bruv? And then further to that, another situation happened. It was non-uniform day. First non-uniform day. And I went in, this is West Coast.
It's a big thing in Scotland as well.
Yo, I went in.
You get to wear whatever the fuck you want.
Whatever the fuck you want. Apart from green or blue, I found out.
Really?
Very much to my chagrin. I've not used that in a while. Love that word. But basically, I went in and I was wearing a blue t-shirt. Sorry, no, a green t-shirt.
Uh-oh.
Green t-shirt. And
was it football colors or something? Is that why?
Someone didn't speak to me. Someone who I spoke like just totally like pied me.
Okay.
And I was like, we're good. I've not done anything like stupid, have I? Whatever. And then they didn't speak to me all day.
Right.
Avoided me. I came back in the next day and stuff, wearing like our school uniform. It was calm. And I said, like, if I'd done something, like, what's up? Like, you didn't speak to me all yesterday or whatever. Like, we're normally cool. I was like, oh, it's nothing. I was like, is it this? Is it this? It's like, oh, no, I'm not racist. I was like, okay, cool. That's a relief. What's up then? It's the shirt. It's like, what do you mean it's the shirt? You wearing that shirt. I was like, what shirt? The green shirt. It's like, what? It's like, you're wearing the green shirt. It's like, what's wrong with it? It's just a green shirt. And it was like, oh, it means you're a Celtic fan, not a Rangers fan. And I was like, you didn't speak to me all yesterday because I wore a different color. How old are you again? And then it was like, oh no, this is how. And then I asked someone, and they're like, this is how like everyone behaves. And I was like, over a color.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, it blew my mind. And I was like,
well, you're essentially being exposed to tribalism from at that young age. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same with everything in this world. Humans are fundamentally tribalistic.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest aspects that gets ignored as well when it comes to equality. Like, we have to see that we have a tendency to sort of lump people into groups and then sort of
that categorization them, is problematic.
Outsiders,
Absolutely.
You don't want Vikings coming in, fucking everyone. So you have to sort of be prepared that there's outsiders that are going to take your women or something.
Yeah.
And I think this may be bringing it full circle is where if we get technology and maybe, we're able to download our consciousness into computers or robots, I think we'll bypass that biological part. I think maybe...
Do you think?
We'll stop having to sort of create groups and stop ostracizing people because, they're ginger or whatever. And I think that's something that will happen in the future, and I think that's when we have true sort of like a global civilization, and I think it's going to be with the help of technology.
Do you think the only way that's going to work is if like maybe legally you're not allowed to like choose the same bodies you had before, so they force you maybe to live as like a black person?
Well, yeah,
or they force you to live as like a woman, and then you come back as that.
Not forced.
People not forced.
No, people will probably choose to be a black.
Do you think so?
You want like all flavors of life, like that's just the way to sort of be, I think.
Imagine a couple million like Rachel Dolezal walking the earth, man.
Well, that's the interesting thing about altered carbon is, I've said this a billion times about sci-fi. All good sci-fi reflects what's going on in society at that time.
Very true.
Very true. I think it does a great job of doing that, even though it's a book from the, I'm not sure actually, maybe the early 19th century or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the guy in it goes through different sleeves and different races. Like, he's an Asian guy to begin with. Okay. And then he goes into an older Asian guy. Right. Because he gets taken in by some paramilitary group. Okay. So he's an eight-year-old kid who then gets given an adult's body. Right. As a slave. And then he goes to another Asian guy into, I think there's the blonde white guy, obviously. Okay. And it's going to go on, I think they're going to have a second season, so I think they're just going to keep doing this. It's going to be like a sci-fi noir Doctor Who, I think. Okay. They could possibly go on forever with it.
So the way they put it across, like when this person is in their sleeve, yes, is there any sort of like visual suggestion of their old self? Like, can you see maybe like say a white face or black face, but then you have them that alongside?
Initially, when he first comes out, because he was part of some sort of the paramilitary group. They were rebels fighting against the man. So this was 250 years before the future. Okay. And he gets frozen because he's like a badass, a legit badass. Cool. So they freeze him in a different sleeve. No, he's put into a sleeve when he gets there. So when he wakes up, he still thinks he's like this Asian dude.
I see.
And he takes a mirror and he sees the Asian face, but then it melds into the stark reality of him being in another sleeve comes in.
Okay.
And he sees that face that he is now. And that's the only inkling that he's like this Asian guy.
Wow,
before.
okay, cool.
And he has hallucinatory sort of visions of his past life.
Right.
And that's just what comes with your consciousness, I guess. And that's the only sort of weird thing that happens with it. Everyone sees his new sleeve and he sees himself as that sleeve.
All right.
And I think ultimately that's kind of like a stab at equality, I guess, like to know where everyone comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of a good way to sort of frame it, I think.
Okay.
It's definitely one you should watch. I'm telling everyone.
Yeah, I'm keen to watch this now. See, the reason I said forced earlier, as in being forced into like a different body or different skin, is because I'm like willing to bet that there are people who wouldn't want to swap into a different ethnicity or whatever. Yeah. And the funny thing is that either they won't want to do it because of a sense of superiority or supremacy, or they won't want to do it because they are fully aware of the disadvantages that come, disadvantages or advantages that come with that positioning. And this is why I made the joke about Rachel Dolezal, because she, man, I feel for that lady. But anyways, she's obviously out here just like trying to live her best life as like a kind of black woman. Yeah. She's not black.
Who's that? Sorry.
If you look her up, she's the woman who she's kind of like super tan. Okay. She dresses like a black woman, and she kind of.
Is that the woman that pretended to be?
That's the one.
Pretended to be part of the. Well, she was part of the Black Lives Matter, but she pretended. Well, no, she changed her story. She says she identified.
That's correct.
As a black person,
and rose through the ranks to become like someone. And then everyone's like, "Hang on, who are you?" Now, the funny thing is,
that's a sticky point though, because. People who identify as something, could you identify as a black person? Well, not you, because obviously, you could identify as a non-black person, just a general sort of, not even another race, just not black.
Yeah.
Is that something that you could say? And is it something that people would have to then accept?
That's a good question.
And I'm not trying to equate that to an attack helicopter, but you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to frame it. I'm trying to frame it in a more palatable way, sort of thing, because it is in sort of a point, I think that is going to come up sometimes, like that Rachel, whatever her name is,
Dolezal,
identifying as I hate that word African American. It's just you're a black American. Yeah. There's people that have been like, how long has it been since you were in Africa?
True.
I hate that word.
But they get called that because it's just a demographic that they've chosen to refer to us, and it's curious because like they don't describe because they'll describe sort of Spanish American, Chinese American, Italian American, etc., etc., and people identify as Americans. Yeah. Well, they're not really Americans. They are technically from the UK, so they're British American. If you look at it from if we're trying to be like really strict about what everyone qualifies as, but they'll say they're American, and then you have like Native Americans who are they're American really. They're not. I mean, you could just call them American and call everyone else. Do you know what I mean? So it's this weird like.
There is a sort of weird lines.
Yeah. But the Rachel Dolezal thing, if I said identified, I think that a lot of it obviously is based on that visual thing, and the visual thing, in turn creates then that inherent bias. So, for her, she's managed to get as far as she's gotten with her shtick because she looks the part. Yeah. Generally, if you weren't looking hard enough, you just accept that.
She looks light skinned.
Yes.
Like I think she has sort of. You know how you get people that have a lot of freckles, and it does look like they're sort of like have a sort of a tan bit of skin. Yeah. Generally, like people who are not because all the freckles are joining up. I just mean like there are a certain sect of ginger people that have a sort of a tanned face. Yeah. And she kind of looks like that.
She's definitely. I would say she's definitely dark enough to qualify as like maybe like a light skinned black woman. Okay. Like if you weren't looking hard enough. Yeah.
Which most people were.
Right. So. She can do that. The curious thing is, she changed her name at some point to some Nigerian name, and then she complained about how hard it was for her to get a job after she changed her name. And I remember reading the article and I burst out laughing. I was like, now you're living the truth. Like, come through. Yeah. Let's have. Do you know what I mean? It was like, so.
I kind of assumed that you were going to make a joke about, one of those jokes that to sort of soften the ground a bit with Kenneth. Like I thought you were going to say something along the lines like, it's not a black name or something like that.
Oh no, she's straight up. She changed it. Like it went like it wasn't Rachel Dolezal anymore. It was
to tie that in though, it's like, why does words equate to some like what? I'm making it too sort of general. Why does a name why would Kenneth not be something that's black or white or anything? Like, why would it be something that people assume is a non name to what your skin color is? It's weird how we sort of and it's not something that you said, but in my head I was just anticipating maybe something like one of those sort of moments people say something like that to sort of soften the ground, like what we're talking about. Yeah. And I was just going to anticipate my response, like maybe. And then I went down a rabbit hole of why would that? It's hard to explain.
So the reason we all have Christian names.
But why would she change it to a Nigerian name when it's like her name could be anybody's name?
That's true, but I think again that's definitely part of her adopting the identity completely.
Right. Okay.
And this is the thing. Like if you look at most people who aren't from here originally.
Yeah.
I love that expression. From here originally.
Everybody.
Right? But, like your ethnic minorities and stuff, and the fact that they have Christian names. They have Christian names because of the propagation of Christianity over the course of history. Mm-hmm. Like, if missionaries hadn't come to Africa and basically, said, you're going to worship this God, and because you're going to worship this God, you're going to get a name which we're going to call a Christian name. Mm-hmm. It's a name which is from our place. Mm-hmm. And you're like, so it's called Christian because my name, for example, Kenneth, that's a Scottish name.
Yes.
It means head of fire, also means handsome. But it means head of fire, like redhead, ginger, which is, it still ties in. But so if I didn't have that name, I'd have just a Nigerian name. Okay. And it'd be a Nigerian name that refers to the first name that individualizes me, and then the second name which tells people what regional, tree I come from.
Regional sort of.
Well, like family branch or whatever. Yeah. So let's say like a surname. Even the concept of the first and surname is still kind of like, like that's definitely a very like westernized way of looking at things, like they'd say maybe
Swedish, like all the Scandinavian countries is son of, so it's
exactly
like Thor son,
that kind of thing. So they everything ties you back to your parent or ties you back to your origin, basically. So I wouldn't have a name like Kenneth. I may have like a different name. So that's a really interesting thing. Because she's tried to like make it kind of OG as possible, like going for a really Nigerian name, but still has a surname there. She still has a first name and a surname, which is the way of
it's a Western structure.
Absolutely, of a way of naming things. So I sometimes think actually how different it would have been if like we were still like running around in like loincloths out there, like no westernization, no like worshiping whatever we thought was our like own version of gods or our own different type of gods and stuff. And also how it's very curious now that back home, the perception of people who still do that is that they are uncivilized and subsequently almost kind of inferior, right? Like sort of
like tribesmen,
intellectually inferior, like tribesmen, intellectually inferior.
So is that something that's becoming commonplace in say in places in Africa?
I would say so, but what that is a really interesting like trickling down of that mentality from here. And people have just adopted that without questioning and being like, why, just because we're in this position now, we think we're better than the people who are in this position. And you always reference that down to tribalism, down to kind of like the way the propagation of ideas creates a hierarchy. So I do sometimes think about that, like sort of what would happen if I was like, if I didn't even have different name, they'd call me something else. It was
Storm.
Yeah.
I think you're a good storm.
Storm. That's interesting, actually. That I've never thought about.
You have to get the grey hair.
Yeah.
Just a pagan name. Go for it. Go
a
all
totally
out.
pagan name. Because I do actually have a traditional name, which is Olufemi.
Right.
And what it actually means, and I'm actually not blowing my trumpet here. This is literally what it means. It means gift of God.
Okay.
If you translate it literally, it means that it's like by giving me this, God is being good to me. So basically, gift of God. The translation, if you're going for an English name, would be Jonathan, because that's what Jonathan means. So in theory, my name would be Kenneth Jonathan.
Yes.
And then my surname, which has really like complex meaning.
Okay.
So, but
that's interesting though.
Yeah.
That's such a cool sort of thing to have. I think we've kind of lost all sense of with names. I think I think we've not got that. I think it's important when you're naming someone, like a kid or or an animal or something like that. I think we've lost that sort of tradition about it, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
But is that a good or a bad thing? Are traditions like that sort of worth
dated?
it? Are they dated? Yeah. I mean, is that only to sort of keep us separated? Our families are our little tribe, and is that going to stop you from feeling like you can connect with even anyone else?
Well, yeah, because I mean, there's you associate the name Tom with like a rich middle class person or Poppy or something like that. Yeah. And you associate like other names, which I'm not going to go into because I'm not trying to out here diss people's names and that. I don't know. But you make those associations based on what you hear, So I don't know. Are they dated? Maybe. But then if you're going to unravel that way of thinking, you have to unravel everything that comes with it. Yeah. Or do you have to unravel everything that comes? Can you pick and choose what you decide to unravel? What you leave behind, And
I think the names are sort of specifically to try and like as a part of society, it's to know you're as much as an individual, so they can tell you apart from other people, I guess.
Yeah.
Not even yourself. I think it's more societal pressure to sort of, or even governmental, to be like, at least he's one of the Darren Kinlocks.
That's correct. Yeah.
And there's only 7 of them in this country.
Actually.
No, I don't know. There's only, I think there's one other guy in England. He's complete.
Okay. I think I'm the only of mine.
Right.
First name and surname.
Yeah, because that would be like a hard combination to pair together.
I was curious as well, like sometimes there is resistance, like so in those areas sometimes there is a resistance to get an English first name. Kind of like, what are you doing? Why are you taking that on? Like you should do this or whatever.
I mean, my name, my real name, like my nickname's always been KP, but Darren.
Where did that come from, by the way? Sorry,
it's a long, boring story.
Okay, so anything to do with nuts.
That's what I used to tell everyone, because it was like I couldn't be bothered telling people this shit story. Okay. Essentially, my last name's Kinloch.
Yeah.
And my friend from Glasgow, when I was at college in Perth, when I was studying music, he had never heard the word puss before. Because we all say, like, in Scotland, puss means your face.
Yes.
And from Glasgow, he was like, never heard of it. So he was calling me Kin Puss. Like he just kept saying it for some reason, thinking that I was like getting annoyed by it. And eventually he shortened it to KP.
Okay.
And then that stuck ever since. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's really shit and boring.
Oh man.
I just tell people I'm nuts. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Or I'm a kitchen porter.
Oh yeah. Never thought about that one.
Yeah, washing dishes all the time.
Yeah. But sorry, you were saying before I kind of jumped in about your name and
like Darren, like I think that's a very American name, I think.
Okay.
I think the first time it was used on television was Darren from I Dream of a Genie.
All right.
Do you remember the husband?
Yes.
It was the old 1950s TV show.
Vaguely, very vaguely.
And I think it's a very modern name, but still it doesn't seem to fit in with like the Christian names like John and and I think it's kind of cool to have, it's a little thing. I mean, I'm not married to my name, my last name maybe slightly,
what does Kinloch come from? What is that?
That's Scottish. And
what does it mean? Son of lake or something?
Head of the lake.
Head of lake.
Oh, head of the lake.
Okay.
And
cool.
it's before there was I think it was one of the first sort of proper Scottish last names in Scotland. It's a really old one, but it doesn't mean anything, it's like it's also a lake in Fife, I think that's where my ancestral lands are.
I see. Okay.
But there's a statue of my great uncle in Dundee.
Wow.
His name's George Kinloch. He was the first MP of Dundee. You know, the one beside Queen Victoria in the sort of the square bit just down from McDonald's. You know, there's all the bronze statues around the sort of. Oh, have they taken them down? Actually, I don't know what they were doing.
Isn't
a lot.
The McManus Gallery?
I'm not sure. You know where McDonald's is on
Reform Street?
Yeah. You know, all the way down towards not up towards the centre, but away from it.
Okay, yeah, I know where you are.
There's all the statues there.
Yeah.
You can see him there, and he looks exactly like my dad.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy, like.
Hang on, so is it the one that's facing, which is right opposite the DC Thompson building?
I think so. There was a school there, was there not?
Yeah, so if you're walking...
Because it's all
up
been
from McDonald's.
It's all had work done in it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So basically, you come out the overgate.
Yeah.
And then turn right down the street to McDonald's. You keep going all the way down there.
Okay.
And there's the statues at the bottom there. Like,
okay. Cool.
Just
That's your dad. That's your dad. Cool.
And I think one of my great granddads was a famous Scottish composer as well, James Kinloch. He did a lot of sort of classical music. And he ran away. He was a deserter because he didn't want to fight in the war against France, I think. He went to France to sort of hide out with them.
Did he actually?
Yeah, he's just like, because Scotland and France have had a long, history together. And he didn't want to fight for the English again.
Do you think your musical streak comes from anywhere near there?
I don't know. Is it innate? Is it something that's, genetic? Is it something that's genetic memory? Maybe one of your ancestors took the time to sort of learn music and then it is passed down genetically to you.
Like some sort of natural skill, maybe.
Yeah, or is it something, just your brain's separated in such a way that you just by luck that you have that. I mean, I'm left-handed, so that tends to be something that comes for musical people is left-handedness.
Really?
Yeah, like Jimi Hendrix was left-handed. He played his guitar. A right-handed guitar, but up the other way. So, hey, it's crazy. But most people who are left-handed, who play regularly, like right-handed, that's like the best way to play it, supposedly for guitar. But
left-handed people playing guitar.
So if you're left-handed, play just the normal right-handed one.
Really?
Yeah, because all your sort of your pickings on your
left hand.
No, your fingerings on your left hand. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's supposed to be the good one. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
No.
I was kidding, by the way, about like coming at lefties and stuff like that. Like that's not big. I don't really care. Like, as long as it sounds good. Man. Like one of my favorite like contemporary guitarists, like newer guitarists, he's left-handed.
Okay.
Is he? He plays it upside down. I'm confused.
The word sinister was used for people who were left-handed.
Are you serious?
That's where it comes from. Yeah. I'm pretty sure actually. I'll see, because I think it was a word to use to describe left-handed people. Back in the day, yeah.
Oh,
because it was seen as unnatural again.
Don't
quote me on it.
Humans been at it for time, if that is the case. But I mean, yeah, that's crazy.
So, did you manage to see Black Panther?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
Not because it's like relates to anything else, but it's just like
I like rap too.
But it's a rap. It's a tarp.
Oh my gosh.
But it was like just because it's in the news and it's obviously has some sort of it has social relevance
cultural
as well.
Significance.
And a huge
absolutely.
cultural significance.
Yeah.
Even if you're not black and you can just see it for what it is as well.
Yeah.
As a Marvel fan, it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Without anything surrounding it. You know, it's up there. It's probably one of my top 3.
It's a great film.
Are you into Marvel normally?
Yes.
Okay.
One of my favorite. I don't know which is in there. I'd say I think Captain America: Civil War is arguably my favorite Marvel film.
Cracker, yeah.
I was saying just like overall execution and like Feige is just like so good at what he does. The Russell brothers just like top notch. Yeah, Black Panther's a curious one. I'm kind of still surprised. Do you want to say that? Surprised at the level of impact it's had.
It's definitely struck a chord.
Yeah, very surprised at the level of impact it's had. The way, what's really cool is like having like one more option to dress up as for Halloween and without feeling like awkward, like
feeling like you have to weigh up.
Yeah, well, but I feel like it's also something that a lot of people needed, like a surprising number of people needed, in terms of representation, and it's maybe something I didn't really feel that connected to. Is maybe like as an African, because I think that like maybe my sense of identity is maybe a bit stronger,
right?
Just so having grown up at home and stuff like that.
It's not really a surprise to you what's the elements that were brought forward.
No, not really. No, not really. But I imagine that if you're coming up maybe as like an African American in that environment and looking at all that stuff, and you're just looking at the way kind of history has transpired for an African American, stuff like watching Black Panther must be like something else. Yeah, like super
empowering.
Yes, absolutely. I'll actually be honest, because like I said, I wasn't expecting very much from it. Yeah. I was just expecting a half decent Marvel film, and they did deliver on that point. There are a couple of things though where I was like, damn, like this is grand. Yeah. Like when like the flyover scene when he's coming back home. I'm not giving any spoilers away. Like there was obviously gonna be a flyover scene, but that scene, I actually had like goosebumps. Yeah. I was like, yo, like this is happening in an African setting. Here's what it is. You know what I mean? It was grand. And I remember thinking, damn, I didn't realize how much of this I wanted to see until I saw it.
Yeah, it probably kind of caught you by surprise that it was something that you were responding to, I guess. Yeah. It took me a while to sort of formulate an opinion on it because there was so much weight outside of the actual movie. And, absolutely. I didn't get it to begin with. I thought it was a fantastic Marvel movie, but because I'm, a white guy in Scotland, I don't understand the sort of the cultural sort of effort behind it as well. So I just, brilliant Marvel movie. And then it was only over the last couple of weeks that I've started to figure out that I've seen how it's affected, young black kids, even in the UK and other places. And that's, like you say, like it's another option for, like Halloween at the very least,
absolutely.
And it is sort of something to sort of, you're not just, it is something that you're kind of, is yours as just as a person in general,
yes,
and
absolutely,
and it's great to see that, it's good. I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, I thought the flyover scene was brilliant, and the sort of the world building they kind of made with it as well. It was so rich, it was a rich sort of scene as well.
And it's awesome because that actually does tie into, like, very much into how I perceive home. That richness. It's not necessarily like a material richness. It's more of like a richness of what's the word I'm looking for? Like soul. Yeah. Like you just feel a certain way in that community. Just the way everyone's energy comes out. Yeah. It's very I
know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, this is a weird speculation, but it's almost like sometimes people talk about like vibrations and stuff like that, and how they believe that like everyone like has like a vibration, and so I would describe it as like a chord. Okay. This is a musical channel, but like a chord, and like a major chord,
like a positive sort of vibration. That's correct. Yeah.
That's what it feels like. It feels like a major chord.
I'm an A minor guy myself.
Oh, you actually? I'm a C sharp minor guy.
Oh shit!
But I'm very partial to a G major.
Oh yeah, everyone loves
just the grand.
When you bring a G major into a piece that's sort of minor as well, that it sounds like amazing.
Take you somewhere else. Like, here we go. Let's go smile for a bit, kind of.
Anyway, for the non-musical geeks. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It does. There is a sort of. Africa is a continent that has been sort of stripped of identity all throughout history, and I guess you've sort of maintained it through your actual. And I say you because you're actually from Africa, and it's been maintained through having such a rich culture. Yes. Is it the right word to use?
That's
culture?
Correct. That's correct. Because that's something that you can't touch. Yeah. You can't take that away. It's like, at the end of the day, if someone takes everything away from you, what do you have left? Yeah. And it's definitely that culture thing. I think that's very kind of, that's very acute. The way you mentioned there, as in the way like Africa's had stuff kind of taken from it, and it's interesting because I don't know if Africa or most of Africa even like is aware.
Yeah.
You get like the occasional scholar or the occasional kind of like person who comes through and says, you know, this isn't cool. Like what's happened in terms of like all the stuff that's ours that was taken just because we couldn't do anything about it. We weren't in a position, you know, intellectually or militaristically or anything like that to do anything about it. But it has been taken. And I think that like one of the bigger reasons that Africa isn't in that position of abject destitution is because of that culture thing. And I think that culture thing does keep people going. It's like a fuel.
Keep the head above the water.
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah. It's like a fuel. And sometimes I wonder actually, like, if you took everything from here away, like, what would be left? Like, how would we? Like, that's curious. I'm saying we because I'm integrated. I feel like I'm integrated now anyway. But like,
well, you are but
if you took everything from here, if you took that all away, all the technology, everything, like, what would be left?
I mean, I'm struggling to say that we would have something left, but I don't know. You know, it's hard to speculate.
Yeah,
because
true.
we haven't been tested. I guess we've obviously Scotland's been through a lot with the English, but we've always been part of the same sort of country essentially. You know, it's a civil war basically. That's all it's been, and I'm not sure. I don't know how we would react to something like that. Anyway, we've gone way deep with this. So to kind of just finish it up here, I'm just gonna ask you some questions.
All right.
Favorite book that you've read or you're reading?
Ooh. Oh man. So read. What book did I enjoy? I read. I hate to say this, man, because he's recently revealed himself to be like almost like the antithesis of what the book was about. Yeah. But Aziz Ansari's Modern Romance.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. That book is.
When did that come out?
I think it's been out for a couple of years.
Right. Okay. So it's like post.
Yeah. It was post. Yeah. Recent fuckery. Yeah. But that book was like a very, very good detailed insight into just the way we kind of navigate the current field or minefield of interpersonal relationships. Okay. You know,
it's not one I've heard. Like, that's cool.
Interesting book. And I hate like I remember when I heard this stuff, I was like, no, you're supposed to know how to do better based on what the book said. Totally. But no. What else?
Favorite movie that you've seen or that you've seen recently?
Ooh. Again, that's hard to pin down to one thing because it depends on sort of what I'm taking in at the time.
Changes like with music, like it's how you're feeling.
Absolutely.
That, you know?
I'm into like visuals at the moment, really kind of like engaging visuals. So I'm really, really into stuff directed by Denis Villeneuve. Okay, yeah. And if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Canadian guy.
No, yeah.
Absolute visionary. Yeah. So he did Arrival and he did Sicario.
Is it Annihilation? Is that Annihilate? Is it No, I'm thinking of the guy that did Ex Machina.
Oh, yeah. He's also cool. It's not him. No.
I get them mixed up.
But he did Arrival and Sicario.
Arrival's brilliant.
Right? Have you seen Sicario?
No.
You should watch it. Watch it with like, if you can get like a decent sound system or something decent, because the sound design on it's also fantastic, and the tension and just the cinematography is fantastic. The way they do these like sweeping shots, where there's like nothing being said, and all it does is just leave you with like
a feeling.
A feeling of what's happening in that scene.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And favorite quote.
Damn.
Oh. It's the last one, I promise.
I thought you were going to ask me a musical question. You've totally like skirted around musical stuff.
Yeah, I know. I could go on about music all day. So I thought I'd take you out in international waters.
My favorite quote. That's a toughie, to be honest, because I don't really operate very much around those. Okay. There are a couple of like...
Even a favorite, like a line from a movie or something.
There are a couple of like Yoruba quotes, which are like the Nigerian tribe, which are really funny quotes.
Right. That'd be cool if you could remember them.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. Am I allowed to look it up just in case?
You can do what you want, yeah.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
I remember them, like some of them off the top of my head, but it's just like one of those ones where it's like...
This would be a good sort of note to end on.
Right, so... so we can find this.
Yeah, it's really hard to sort of think of a quote if you've not sort of read something recently. I've had a few funny ones on here actually.
Really?
Which I can't remember obviously because I'm slightly hungover as well. That's why I'm not drinking anything.
Right, so we can find this. So so of course it describes proverbs.
Okay.
If this loads up. Come on.
Is it one you've heard since you were like, or is it something you've sort of organically looked back on and sort of researched, or is it something that you've heard like from someone in your family or?
Yes, actually, because my dad used to quote them like all the time. There are so many of them.
Okay, he's just scrolling.
There are so many. I'm actually like stumped.
It's okay if you can't get one.
Oh yeah, so there's this one, and I can't even say it properly, but it's like, if you keep looking back when you run, you will inevitably trip and fall.
That is a good one to live by.
I remember that. Like that was but he said it in like he said it in Yoruba, and I don't remember. If I heard it, I'd be like, that's what he's saying.
You can't remember.
But I remember like translating it to be as that. If you keep looking back when you run, eventually trip and fall.
Okay, there you are. And thanks for coming on, man.
Absolute pleasure, man.
Honestly, come back on.
It's been real. It's been real.
And where can people find you on social media if you've got an acceptable form that you want people to?
So
Instagram or something.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram as Wolfgang. So it's double V and then ULLF gang.
W.
Yes, W. On there I just post like just try to take like really edgy pictures.
Yeah, of course.
I'm on Twitter as well.
You're bored guy in Scotland. What else are you gonna do?
Right. Twitter as well, and I also kind of gotten into engineering and producing music as well.
Oh, nice.
So I do that kind of thing, and while you guys are at it, just check out like a bunch of guys I do projects with. So at the moment I'm involved with Stone Thrower, which is like a math punk type band.
Sweet.
Like kind of like at the drive-in meeting Fugazi halfway,
right.
Something like that, and Little Anchors, which is another really like cool project which I drum for. So check those out.
Cool, man. I need to listen as well. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and see you next week.